I'm the VP of Marketing. My name's Joseph Lynn. Tarmin is a company that's been around for a fair few years. I think we were founded in 2007, and we're really focused on bringing value from data and finding ways to really drive that value. So as I said, Tarmin was founded in 2007. We've got corporate headquarters in Boston and London, and we're really focused on this idea of data-defined storage. Now, really what happened was our CEO, Shahbaz Ali, he was working in a company called Mondex back in about the 1990s, and they were acquired by MasterCard. When that happened, they found that there was a huge amount of data flowing into their systems, and they found that there was this sense of this impending growth in data, and they felt that the systems that were available at the time would no longer be able to manage that growth. And so we came up with this idea of data-defined storage, which is really all about finding ways to realize the value from the data. It's about recognizing that there's three core challenges associated with data growth. Data growth and the cost of managing that, the cost of the operational side of that. There's the challenges associated with managing data risk and data governance. And then there's the challenges associated with finding, discovering, and analyzing data. And that's what data-defined storage is really about. And we've brought the GridBank data management platform to the table. Now, I know that you guys all know all about this stuff, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but essentially it's about saying that there's been a trend over time for the cost of storage per terabyte to trend downwards. IT budgets are relatively stagnant or flat, and then there's this massive growth in the cost of managing unstructured data, and it's growing and it's causing challenges for organizations across the world. So what are those challenges manifested as? Well, we see data growth challenges. So there's exponential unstructured data growth. Some say it's about 8%, 85% of data growth generally. Data gets trapped in data silos, so you can't necessarily find the data that you want to be able to access. You don't necessarily gain access across the data, across your entire unstructured data estate. In the same way, there's increasing challenges associated with stringent regulatory requirements. There's a lot of governance challenges, retention, compliance, those sort of issues, and that causes a lot of risk for organizations. In the same way, you have data protection challenges, so being able to make sure that you've got your data secure, available across all of your different environments, making sure that you don't lose it, and checking the integrity of that data. And then you have the issue of data discovery. So being able to find the data across all of your data estate, it can be a significant challenge. Search and discovery, e-discovery, responding in timely ways to e-discovery requests. And finally, being able to get the value from the data. We all know that there's this massive untapped source of value that is represented in the data, but you need to be able to really drill down into it and analyze it, understand it, and realize that return. So how are organizations coping? Well, we see them adding additional NAS devices. We see them adding new point solutions for archiving or for email archive management or file archive management. And each one of these different applications adds on an additional level of complexity. And we think that kind of makes it more challenging for organizations to manage that. In the same way, we have the issue of people deciding that they've got too much storage or not enough storage to manage the volume of data, so they find themselves manually deleting files, creating copies of the data for big data analytics. There are lots of different approaches to these sorts of things. Ultimately, it's about finding single tactical issues to what is fundamentally a strategic challenge. So we felt that this was really driving a set of new requirements and new ways of looking at business. And I think that modern businesses are looking for ways to address this by saying, okay, we need a new architectural approach. We need to look at data as the core issue as opposed to the storage media itself. And this is really about looking at it from a more strategic perspective. It's about saying, actually, what really matters is the data, and we need to look at this from an organisational perspective as opposed to just a just a tactical issue.
Joseph, a quick question there. Have you got any idea about the lost value that, on your previous slide when you talk about people deleting files and things like that, have you got any idea about the lost value that people are seeing by doing those things? You know, because that's what people have done forever. So,
yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
why is it being a problem if people haven't got any way of quantifying what they've lost and changing their behaviour? So why worry about it?
I think you're absolutely right. It's one of those things. It's what people do. So if you can't quantify it, then you can't necessarily say this is the cost that you're seeing. I mean, we've done ROI analyses. I wouldn't like to say exactly the number because it's going to depend on the organisation. But certainly, if you deploy a single solution that addresses all of those issues and kind of brings it all into a single centralised point and manages it in that way, we've seen substantial cost savings up to around about 80% is what we would typically find. Okay. But as I say, your mileage may vary depending on the organisation. Ultimately, though, this is really about the more of a way of looking at the problem than it is about necessarily assessing it. Because as you say, right, that's how people traditionally do it. So you need to kind of get into a new mindset to look at it in a different way. And this is, we call this about the idea of data centricity as opposed to media centricity. Because in the past, the traditional vendors have kind of looked at the problem of growing data growth, and they've said, okay, well, we'll just throw more disks at the problem. We'll provide bigger and better solutions. And then, to be fair, the capacity of the storage media is growing, and it's still keeping up, but maybe not quite to the extent that the volumes of data are growing. And that's really where we've seen the problem. So we've looked at it and we've said, okay, well, really it's about finding ways to scale with commodity hardware rather than with proprietary hardware. It's about making sure that you have a security environment that addresses all of these issues from an identity perspective. It's about making sure that you have access to the data across wherever you are. And we're seeing this with organisations that provide sync and share and all of those sorts of solutions. And I think that all of this is about bringing together a more intelligent and a deeper understanding of the data within the infrastructure itself. So the approach that we're taking, we consider it to be a data-centric architecture, and we're saying this is what people are looking for, and maybe they don't necessarily know it yet because, as you say, there's that traditional approach, right? But over time, it's becoming clearer that there's this new and driving force in saying we need to address this in a more strategic approach, or in a more strategic way. And we see that the benefits that you get are things such as improved operational efficiency, reduced business risk, greater business agility, enhanced decision making through integration with analytics, and fundamentally it's all about bringing greater competitive advantage to the market.
Sure. Concretely, what it means? It means that you are the level of services for your product. It's around the criticality of the data. What it means to be data centric?
Right, data centric. Okay. So data centric, we're saying that we're making the data the core focus on what we're doing. So essentially, when we talk about technology a little bit more, I'll kind of make it clearer. But essentially, what our product does is it indexes all of the content of the data, and it provides it through a distributed metadata repository. And by doing that, it captures all of the information, all of the fields, all of the content, and it allows you to manage that at the data level as opposed to at the storage level. The storage becomes abstracted.
Yeah, but it don't explain us why it's better to manage it like that more than from before from the storage or media level.
I think it just gives you more power and more flexibility as to how you deal with it. I mean, for example, things like a concrete example, somewhere like a health service, right? We've got an example of that later on that I'll talk in more detail about. But essentially, previously, if you look at it on the hardware side, on the media side, you're just allocating storage, you're allocating resources, and you're dropping the data on it.
Is this something that requires a level of storage virtualization or data virtualization and
Yeah,
global
absolutely.
file system. I think that perhaps might be a better explanation if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly it's about data virtualization and storage virtualization 100%, but it's also about the functionalities around management and governance that it enables. So for example, if I break my arm, I have to retain the radiology image for 2 years. If I break my leg, I have to retain the radiology image for 7 years. Now, if I was to just allocate some storage resource for that, I'd have to manage it manually. But what we're saying is, well, actually, because we can capture the metadata that says that's a rail arm image or that's a leg image, we can automatically apply the governance policies to say retain that for 2 years or retain that for 7 years. And by doing that, you're simplifying the active work of managing that governance, but at the same time, you're putting in place the policies that control it and manage it. That's kind of what we're talking about when we say data centricity.